My name is Marietta Mahani, and this week's Aqua tip is just a little lesson in action versus reaction. Now, this stuff that we're standing in right now, which is called water, has got resistance. So it's one of those things that when you push one way, there's a ripple effect. So if I go back like this, you can see how the water starts to move further away. Pull the arm in, the water moves that way. So, but when we start moving in it, because of the water flow, our body might be propelled in a different direction. Now I'm going to give you an example of the baby crawl, or I call it baby crawl, but known to other people as the mountain climber. I've been calling it baby crawl for years, and then out came mountain climbing. I'm like, that's not mountain climbing. Babies crawl along the floor. This is what babies do. They crawl down. I've never seen anyone mountain climb that way. But anyway, that's a conversation for another video. So here we go. We're on our abdomen, and you're pushing forwards with your arms, and you're kicking back with your legs. Now, some of your participants will do it and stay perfectly still. Yes, excellent. And then you'll see some of your clients, they'll either travel forwards or move backwards. Now, I teach crowded pools, so there's not much space for people to travel, and usually it might mean people might be out of their depth, but I actually really like doing it on the spot for a specific reason, because I want them to match the intensity in both directions. So what you're doing, pushing forwards, and as you drag your fingers back, needs to be as challenging as what you're doing with your lower body, or at the same level of intensity. So that way you stay on the spot. Now what happens when someone's moving is that they're pulling the water backwards more, and that's why they're going forward. So they're actually cupping and dragging back with their hands. Now I have a name for it, and I call it the takers. So unless it's something I want them to do, then that's okay. But if I want them to stay on the spot and they're moving forwards, right, everything's about taking. So they're grabbing the water, they're taking the water, and they're propelling themselves forwards. Now, what happens when people are moving backwards? Now, that's an interesting phenomenon. So when people are going backwards, they are pushing forwards as hard as they can, but they're like, oh my God, Maria, why am I going backwards? So it's all about getting that balance right. So push and pull, and a lot of it's driven by the arms, right? So a lot of it's driven by the arms. So you got to push and you got to pull. You got to push and pull. So the fingers are turning down in the water. So my hands are going this way and dragging back. Now, what are the legs doing? So ideally, you bring your knees all the way up towards your chest and take your legs all the way back. Yep, so try and bring the knees up high. I often find that sometimes with baby crawl, people do this. Now, it's nice if you're buoyant, because then you don't have to work very hard. We don't want that. That's not why people come to a class to exercise. Yeah, they could do that anytime, right? But for them to get a really good workout, encourage them to bring their knees up. It means if your knees pushing forwards, yep, you've got to make sure that you're kicking back with the same amount of effort. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself moving again. That basically explains the whole point of action. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. And if you want to keep people stable, and I often do, especially with deep water work, I get people on the spot, because then they have to balance everything out. What happens to the front needs to happen to the back of the body, and that way they get that dual activation of both the anterior and the posterior muscle groups. And that is this week's Aqua tip. Teaching action versus reaction when you're on pool deck is very important, and how you use your body and your arms in particular on pool deck is important, because if people don't understand what they're supposed to be doing in the water, for example, you're going to get the undesirable effect of traveling, if that's an undesirable effect. What we're talking about here is being able to understand that for every action, there's a reaction. So if you do want people to move forwards, for example, with that mountain climber, what you want to do is emphasize the pull back so that they take their arms forwards, but they drag more water back. And you can use that word I was using, which is, are you a giver or a taker, or do you balance it out? So in that position, you're thinking about thrusting the water back. If you want someone to do a baby crawl but move backwards, you need to focus more on the push forwards. Alternatively, if you want people to stay on the spot, then you want the balance in what they're doing with both their upper body and their lower body. But it is primarily driven by what they do with their arms. So the classic way I teach the mountain climber or the baby crawl is I come down to the floor, I get the legs being demonstrated first. Then I show what's going to happen with the arms. So the arms go forwards and then the fingers drag back. So it's a push, pull, push, pull, push, pull. Okay? So talk about the conversation of things being takers and things being givers. And I often say you want to make sure that you take as much as you give so that you balance that out. Sometimes your clients, they need a little bit of information around why they're moving forwards or moving backwards. And it's your job as an instructor to educate them about the properties of water. But always make sure that you're also demonstrating correctly. So push and a pull, right? So fingers go forwards, fingers drag back. And that would apply to any exercise, predominantly the ones that you're doing when you're suspended, because when you touch the bottom, you don't tend to have the same sort of effects. So this is when you're suspended or you're doing deep water exercises, and that is this week's Aqua Tip.